Welcome back to the Wide Awake Media podcast. I am your host, DD Denslow, and we're here speaking to leaders, speakers, and political alternatives to the mainstream red and blue legacy parties who have offered nothing but failure for the past century. Today, our guest is leader of the Heritage Party, David Kurten. David is a public speaker, writer, chemist, and social conservative, a Christian who stands on a pro-freedom, pro-family, pro-life platform. Something or a message I believe most voters can get behind, as opposed to the mediocrity of rehashed, reformed conservatives who promise to end the UK nightmare they created in the first place. Remember, everyone is in the files. It is a pleasure to have you on the Wide Awake Media podcast. David, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Darren. Thank you for your very kind introduction. You said a lot about me there, so I hope that's good.
I stole most of it off your X profile, mate. That's what I do. I go on X and go, what do they say about themselves in their bio? I'll make a description or an introduction based on that. In that, I said that you're the leader of the Heritage Party. You are actually a genuine conservative alternative to the sort of mediocre conservatives that we have out there, especially those that are moving across to reform. And you've been very strong on a whole wide range of issues that affect this country. And one of them is immigration. The boats are still coming in at Dover. Thousands are still arriving at airports and through tunnels and on the back of lorries. Why won't our political class stop what is clearly one of the major issues for the UK public?
I think everyone realizes by now that the governments, whether it's a Labour government that we got now or the fake Conservatives, which is what I call them, are facilitating this. They don't want to stop it because they want it to happen. Because there's a whole infrastructure set up to escort the boats across the channel when a normal government would be pushing them back and stop them from arriving. And when they get taken to Dover by the Coast Guard or the border force, the border farce, as it really is, then there are buses waiting for them to distribute them around the country to hotels where they have nice rooms and all their food and all their board and lodging and spending money is already set up for them. And we have tens of thousands coming a year illegally across the channel, and no matter what anyone says and does, and it just goes on, and you get people in the parliament who stand up and say, yeah, we're going to tackle illegal immigration now, but nothing is done to tackle it. Like, they could deal with it today if they wanted to. If they wanted to stop boats coming across the channel, they could stop them today. You get the border force to push the boats back to France, rather than escorting them in. So it's an absolute nonsense for any of these politicians like Shabana Mahmood and whatever to say that they're going to deal with it when they're facilitating it. But, you also have to recognize that the illegal immigration, which is mostly military-aged men, which is where you get all the problems from, it pales in significance in terms of numbers compared to legal migration, because over the last 5 years particularly, there's been so many programs put in place to increase the number of visas given out for work visas and study visas for people to come to the country to over 1.4 million in 2022, 2023. Like, it's come down a little bit now, but it's still running at 900,000 visas being given out a year. So that is a huge issue, which is also a big problem for the country, as well as the illegal boats coming across. Together, it's a nightmare for the people who live here already.
The legal migration is not something that you really see talked about on social media or in the sort of political narrative. Do you think that what's going on at Dover is actually almost a deliberate distraction to hide the fact that we have 10 times, 20 times more people coming in through other ports?
Well, it is bad. I mean, there's no question that the 50, 60,000 people a year coming through Dover or across the English Channel is bad. I mean, that's that's more than net migration was. It's more than double what net migration was before Tony Blair came to power, when it was running about 30,000 a year. So that is a huge number coming illegally. But to some extent, it does mask the legal migration. But they're both bad, but the scale is off the charts for legal migration, and especially since the COVID era, it changed. And people used to complain when there were 300,000 people net coming from the EU. That was a big strain on housing, on health resources, on resources of the country. But that's nothing now compared to net 1 million, or it got up to that level, mostly coming not from the EU now, but from 5 countries in particular: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, and China are the main countries that people are coming from in the new wave, which some people call it the Boris wave, but it's continued under Rishi Sunak and now Keir Starmer. And visas are going down slightly for a number of reasons. A lot of people coming in that period 2022 to 2023 were Ukrainian refugees. Well, they're no longer coming because the wave there was that sort of finished. The care home workers program has been tightened up, and the student dependent visas have been tightened up as well. So there are a number of things that have brought the number of visas down, the legal visas, but they're still running, 500,000 to 1 million a year. I think that needs to be brought down to, with a strict cap of 100,000 each, 100,000 work visas, 100,000 student visas. And then there would be net emigration from the country, which is what you need to alleviate the pressure on housing, public services and everything, because the country isn't going to cope otherwise. And that's just common sense. Isn't it?
It's all falling apart. The NHS, all our services. I work with some disabled people. All the nurses that come in to visit this man, he's had his leg amputated. They're all from Africa. They barely speak English. And, there's probably a whole raft of white girls, English girls who could have those jobs. You mentioned COVID. Do you think COVID was used as a cover to start this mass influx of foreigners? Because that's when in Plymouth, 5-6 years ago, it was a 99% white English town or city. And then all of a sudden we had these huge numbers of Africans come in. Do you think COVID was used to help facilitate this?
Partly. I mean, COVID was a cover for a lot of things. And there wasn't a pandemic. There might have been a virus going around, but it was no worse than a bad flu season. So the whole thing was just a scam and a sham. But what I've discovered recently, I mean, this is slightly different, tangent to it, is, no, you're absolutely right. The mass immigration wave from African countries and the Indian subcontinent did start in 2022, 2021, 2022, after the lockdowns ended. But COVID was more of a cover for a financial crisis. And I never realized that until last year. I mean, at the time, there was a massive liquidity crisis in the plumbing of the global financial system with the repo market, which is emergency liquidity funding from the central banks, because the banks just stopped lending to each other. And now the whole the financial system was going to clog up in the same way as it did in 2008. So COVID was a big cover for that, because it allowed governments to just print money, if you like. I mean, they don't print money, but they just create it digitally to these days, and then spend that money, giving it to banks to lend out and give it to the pharmaceutical companies and the hedge funds. To the extent of trillions and trillions of dollars, pounds and euros around the world. So that was probably the main reason for it. which still most people don't even understand. And as I say, I didn't realize until 5 years after the event. So, and I try to keep abreast of what's going on. So this is something that I think is going to come out now, where more people are going to be aware of this.
And we see that in gold and silver prices. And also I saw a statistic the other day that flashed past my screen, something like 70% of all the dollars in circulation have been printed since 2020. So that just goes to show the amount of quantitative easing that took place. Yeah. On immigration, I saw something on your X feed, and it's to do with the countryside is too white. We need more diversity in the countryside. Now, I live in quite a rural area in the southwest. Do you think that's really code for we're going to start dispersing people that we've got in hotels and in multi-occupancy homes into other regions of the country, more rural regions like here in Cornwall and Devon?
Well, they're already doing it. They've already been doing it for 4 or 5 years. I mean, these migrant hotels are not limited to the places that have had mass immigration in the 70s, 80s, 90s, places like Bradford, Luton, Slough, Leicester. Now, these migrant hotels, as you see, they're in Epping, they're in Braintree, they're in Crowborough, Inverness, Carnethley, Newquay, small towns around the country. And they're even thinking of putting houses of multiple occupancy in villages in the countryside. So they're already doing this. And I think this is really just to wind people up. I mean, this is almost what I call rage bait. And I saw this and I got really wound up about this because it's like these people, they despise our culture, our traditions, our heritage. The people that want to do this want to ruin everything. They don't want any space left anywhere in the country where Indigenous English, Scottish, Welsh, Northern Irish people can continue to exist as a majority and enjoy Indigenous culture. There are people in the government, in every department, in every council who are hell-bent on destroying the fabric of our nation, our heritage and our culture. So this is what it's about. It's no surprise. And the actual government organisation that commissioned this report was DEFRA, Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. And as I said, they should stick to helping farmers, supporting agriculture, making sure our countryside is clean and tidy and there aren't any sewage spills and making sure we got clean water. That's what they're supposed to do, not worry about diversity. That's nothing to do with DEFRA. It shouldn't be anything to do with any government department. But these government departments are infested with common purpose graduates, Fabians, cultural Marxists, and they want to destroy our culture. They want to destroy, anything that reminds them of the past. They hate England. They hate Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and that's why this is done. So, I mean, my response to that is we need to just boot all of these people out and get people working in the government departments, in the government, who actually care about our country and care about preserving and conserving our nation. Otherwise, this is just going to go on, and until people get so wound up, I don't know what's going to happen.
If you was elected leader of the country in the next election, let's just say tomorrow, what actions would you immediately take then to stop this illegal immigration problem the country is facing?
Well, one of the very first things we got to do is declare a state of emergency in the Channel and stop bringing boats to Dover, stop landing boats in England, anything that's coming across illegally. We put a grappling hook on them and tow them back to France. The French will not like that, but we've given them, over £1 billion, something like that, to actually stop these boats, and they don't seem to do anything at all. So, we need to just tow them back to France. That will deal with the illegal immigration. And then, as I've said earlier, we got to deal with the legal immigration by putting very, very strict caps on work and student visas. No more than 100,000 a year work, 100,000 a year student visas. So yeah, we can get some people who will genuinely be good for the country. Students who are academically excellent. Yes, we want them to come across and study at our universities, but we don't want people to come and do noddy degrees who then disappear and become a pizza delivery guy, and then after 5 years get permanent leave to remain. I mean, there's a difference there, which I think for most people is very obvious. So that's what we need to do to deal with immigration. But then to deal with the blob, as it's called, the Fabians and cultural Marxists in the civil service. And I often get asked the question, well, so you do get elected to Parliament, you do even get a majority in Parliament, you won't be able to do anything because the civil service runs the country. And to an extent, the government relies on the civil service to carry out its instructions because they're the people who actually do what they're supposed to do, what the government tells them. So if you've got an army of civil servants who just, are just intransigent and refuse to do what the government says, then, you're stuck. What we need to do is completely change the civil service. We need to make it like the American system, where the permanent secretaries of the department are, dismissed. So we don't have permanent secretaries come up through the blob. The secretaries in the civil service need to be appointed by the government of the day. So then you get your own people in. Sure, the departments that are there, the education department, the home office, etc., carry out the instructions of the government rather than having those instructions blocked by Fabians who are sitting on the positions of permanent secretaries in the 23 departments. That's what needs to be done. And that's in our manifesto. I think we're the only party that recognizes it, and that we have that in our manifesto as something that is an action plan to make the civil service work for the country rather than for their own interests.
I worked at Plymouth City Council for a few years. They soon got rid of me for being too honest and for negotiating. They didn't like me negotiating on prices, but I can tell you that the staff there is the same in the education system. You as a teacher at a time, so you probably saw it yourself. There are a certain type of people, and they are in direct opposition of anything that's conservative. They're very Labour-esque. They're, like you said, very communist ideology that's embedded in our services. And until we weed that out, things will probably never change. Keir Starmer, about 6 months ago, 9 months ago, I can't remember how long ago, he said, what we could do to solve illegal immigration is we could introduce digital ID. Well, I saw your speech at the digital ID protest in December. In fact, I used your speech in one of my videos that I made, David. It was a very good speech. How do you think digital ID is actually sitting right now? It's gone very quiet. It's been overtaken by other stories. Is this still progressing? And has that decision for digital ID been made regardless of the opposition from the public?
Yeah, well, Darren, you're right. People are not talking about it all the time. It's not the center of the focus today, but it could come back any day and be the center of the focus. The thing is, there's so much happening everywhere, in every sphere, all over the world, that it's really hard to keep up. I mean, it's even hard for me to keep up. There's like 3 or 4 major things happening every day at the moment.
And that's deliberate. I think that's deliberate. Yeah, let's just keep us constantly off balance.
It is very difficult to keep up. I mean, this week, I'm the time of making the program, abortion to birth is being debated in the Lords. I haven't even mentioned that yet, but it's something I'm very, very concerned about, because there's the Epstein files and there's possible World War III in Iran going on. So digital ID has taken a back seat at the moment because there's all these huge things that are happening that people are concerned about. But it's still going on. And the thing is, as I sort of mentioned in the speech there that I made in central London, that was a great day. I loved the day. I really enjoyed that. Keir Starmer announced this brick card, which really was a straw man. It was, there was never going to be a brick card. It's being done in another manner. So everyone's like, oh yeah, now we got to fight against brick card, mandatory digital ID. And he pulled back from that. And now he said, no, it's not going to be mandatory. It'll be voluntary. There'll still be right to work checks from 2019, but people can still use paper if they want. You won't have to have a digital ID for those particular right to work checks. But we don't really need them because we've already got a system in place already to do right to work checks for migrants. So you certainly don't need to add digital ID to that. But the thing is, over the last 10 years, actually, even slightly more than 10 years, there's been a whole raft of legislation, whether it's primary or secondary legislation, that has bit by bit added a little bit more to the digital ID infrastructure, which is being built and constructed. So the one login system for accessing all government departments and interacting with the government is still being implemented. And as we know, all the company directors this year are going to have to get a digital ID in order to be able to file their confirmation statements for their companies. Otherwise, their companies will have to be struck off. So they're making it very, very difficult here. And that's come in under what the Tories brought in. It's the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023. And now, of course, the Starmer regime is implementing it, again, showing Tories and Labour acting in concert together. You've got the Know Your Customer regulations, and that was another, the anti-money laundering and terrorist regulations 2017 that brought in for a lot of services compulsory Know Your Customer digital ID verification. So if you want to use certain services, you have to get your biometrics done, which you never had to do before 2017. And now this year you've got the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Act, which is nothing about children's wellbeing, by the way, but they want to introduce digital ID for all children. They will be given what they call a single unique identifier, and that will digitally track children when they come into school, when they go out of school, what they have for lunch, what lessons they're in, and everything about their education performance and anything else that is done to them, either by the NHS or whatever. And then you've also got tokenization going on in the financial system. Miles Harris speaks a lot about this. He's very good to look at if you want to find out more about that, because I'm still trying to work out what this tokenization is, but it's behind your bank accounts. The plumbing of the financial system is completely changing, and it's going to digitize everything. So that's being brought in through regulations and also through the banking powers that be, which is coming down from the Bank of International Settlements in Basel in Switzerland. And there's not much you can do about that apart from come out of the system as much as you possibly can. Don't use a smartphone, use cash, keep using cash. That's one of the best ways to delay, if we can't stop it, to delay it and make it difficult for them to implement, is to keep using cash, which is what I do more and more.
I try to. It's hard though, isn't it? It is hard. We live in this world of convenience, and it's just so easy just to scan your card or use your phone or go online. And I think they're going to make it so difficult for us to resist digital ID, or so uncomfortable for us, that most people will probably collapse, no matter how determined they are to avoid this system. And you mentioned children. That's how they're going to get the public, isn't it? They're going to say, "Oh, it's for the safety of your children. Oh, you've got to verify your age for social media because it's for children's safety." Or when your child is born, we're just going to give them a digital ID number, and then over a period of time, everybody is going to be on the system. You mentioned the abortion legislation that's going through Parliament at the moment. I'm actually not overly aware of what's going on there. Can you tell me a bit more, please?
So this is an amendment to the crime and policing bill, I think. Now, every year or every parliament, every government does a police and crime bill or a crime and policing bill to change it. There seems to be these bills regularly. But when it was going through the Commons, I think one of the Labour MPs introduced an amendment to allow abortion up to birth. So essentially, they would decriminalise abortion up to birth. And during the COVID era, again, when Matt Hancock was the health secretary, he allowed pills by post for abortion. So you couldn't do that before, but because of COVID, in inverted commas, he said, oh, now women who need abortions, they should be able to get pills by post and like have a DIY abortion, do it yourself abortion at home, which is absolutely abhorrent. But it was only supposed to be for people up to 10 weeks gestation. But what's happened over the interim, few years is a number of women have got pills by post and taken them when the child is 20 or 30 or more weeks gestation. And of course, that leads to huge problems because they're not supposed to do it at that length. The child is big and it's about to be born and they kill it with pills by post. And so there've been 6 court cases where women have been brought before the courts in order to, sentence them for that because it's a crime. They want to make it decriminalized so that here it will essentially be abortion up to birth. DIY abortions up to birth will not have any punishment, as they do at the moment. So this is now going through the House of Lords, and there's been a lot of debate on that yesterday. I've got to catch up on it myself. But it's absolutely horrendous that this is essentially going to be bringing in one of the most horrific abortion regimes in the world. The abortion up to birth will be legal in England and Wales. It's absolutely disgusting, to be honest.
And we see this sort of policy being enacted across the Western world, along with a Canada-style euthanasia program. And you have to wonder, do they want us dead? Are they actually trying to, reduce the population? You're saying now that they're getting pills, abortion pills. Next will be euthanasia pills in the post. It's very Children of Men. I always like to bring in a sort of film analogy. Do you think that there is an actual, active program to reduce the world's population? Or at least the Western population of sort of Europeans, etc.
Well, the eugenicists, the cabal, the global cabal, they consider themselves an elite. I don't use that word for them. I mean, they're basically government gangsters. They're basically, psychopathic. This psychopathic cabal openly says that they want to reduce the population down to, 2 billion or 1 billion or 500 million or whatever it is. And many people have said this at the World Economic Forum, at these various global summits that they have, that there's too many people in the world. And I say to them, well, if you want to get rid of some people, why don't you start with yourself? But it's never the people that are advocating for it. It's always everybody else they want to kill off. So, there are some people who definitely do want to kill not just a few people, but billions of people. There are people, some of them are increasingly open about it. And you look at all of the things that are happening, it all seems to be, all these things going through Parliament in the UK, which are, we're in lockstep with other countries around the world, seem to be there to, kill as many people as possible. As you say, abortion kills the young. Yep. And now there's getting on for 300,000 abortions per year in the UK. 300,000. That's one. There's 1 in 3 pregnancies now ends in a child being killed.
That's nearly 1,000 a day. That's an insane number. That's insane. I didn't realise it was quite as high as that.
Well, you see that a lot of people who say, we're pro-choice, they only think that there's a couple of thousand a year, but they don't realize that it's actually, more a couple of 100,000 getting on for 300,000. It's horrific. And then you've got, as you say, euthanasia. They want to kill off older people, or even people that, you see what's happening in Canada. It's not just older people or ill people. It's people who are unemployed or, feel a little bit depressed. They offer them death rather than healthcare. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous.
I had this actually. It's funny that we both sort of chuckled there at the same time, and I had this conversation with my partner, and I was joking about Epstein, which I want to talk to you about in a minute. And I was having a joke about the Epstein files and that. And she was like, "It's not funny. It's not funny." And there is a part of what's going on where you sort of. It's so crazy that you do chuckle at what's going on, if that makes sense.
It's just an interesting, just natural reaction. It's not because I find it funny.
Fear, isn't it?
I don't at all. But it's just like, this is so insane that all you can do is just like laugh. Otherwise, you will just die of depression. But you think about everything that's going on. But of course, the other thing that you and I and many people in the freedom movement have spoken about a lot are the experimental injections, the COVID injections. Loads of people are dying of heart attacks, of cancers, of prion diseases from that, and have been for 5 years, and that's increasing, but that's not spoken about at all. But you still hear regularly young people in their 20s and 30s, athletes falling over and dying from heart attacks and strokes, and that's absolutely related to them getting these COVID injections. So that's another thing that they're using to kill us all off. And there's the solar dimming, which is blocking out the sun, and that means we don't get sunlight, which is healthy, and that affects our mood negatively. So that doesn't kill anyone directly, but I'm sure it's another factor that leads to us generally being less happy, more anxious, more depressed. And I hate it. I go out when I was a kid, I never remember any trails of you call them chemtrails, whatever, I don't know, but the sky was not blanketed with white guff coming out of the back of an aeroplane.
Just like I can see right now out my window.
So it's obvious, and they've admitted it. Now in Florida, Tennessee, in the USA, Spain, they've openly admitted that this is going on. So it's not a conspiracy theory. When governments and states are saying this is happening, well, it's happening. They're telling you, for years, you're considered a crazy conspiracy theorist, and all of a sudden the governments around the world admit this is happening. And so this is real. Conspiracy theorists tell the truth again. But these all impact our health, and this all impacts longevity as well. So it's horrendous.
And we've got a fertility crisis at the same time, some linked to our diets, linked to, like you said, what's in the air that we breathe and the water we drink, but also to the COVID vaccines. The dominant story, and all these people that we're talking about who said, with too many people, we're spraying the skies, have a jab. All these people have appeared on the latest theatre or top story going around on X. It's not something that I originally planned to talk to you about, but it's there. It's hard to miss. And that's the Epstein files. My first question is, do you believe that these files are real?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think they are. They're real emails written between Epstein and many, many other people who are, powerful and wealthy, and are making decisions which affect a lot of other people. And the thing is, this is all the thing that people speak about most is the paedophilia and the child abuse, and that is going on. But if you look deeper into it, Whitney Webb has written a whole series of books, One Nation Under Blackmail, that goes into looking at how Epstein was mainly about finding compromise on people to blackmail them, to control the financial deals and how finances flowed, and how the people in the cabal could benefit from the government in the USA, particularly giving money to military-industrial complex and technocracy and Silicon Valley and those kind of things, and actually controlling all of the industry, all of the economy in the Western world, basically. So he's got his fingers in huge numbers of pies. Also, the question is, how did someone who was rather a mediocre maths teacher become this guy that is like controlling so many people all around the world? He can't just be acting on his own. And, I think it's very clear if you look into it that he's a Mossad operative.
Of course.
And so the Israeli government, the Israeli state is behind him, and there's a lot of other people involved in what he's doing as well. And this then leads us to, when we think about our own country, the UK, we have to consider how much of a nefarious impact does the Mossad and the Israeli government have on the UK government, UK politics, the UK economy. And we're hearing all kinds of things coming out about Peter Mandelson, the power that he had. And, one of the things was he told Epstein some secret information about, 500 billion pounds going to be used to prop up the euro. He told Jeffrey Epstein straight away. He told Jeffrey Epstein straight away about a number of other things, which were very, very sensitive pieces of information. So the Israelis knew, and they could position themselves before an announcement was made by the Prime Minister of the UK. He's a traitor. He should be treated as a traitor. And
Mandelson, although he's resigned from the Labour Party, he wasn't an MP, was he? So I don't really know what that means, but he still appears in the House of Lords and is still effectively allowed to make decisions on our behalf on how we live. He might have a decision-making part in the abortion bill that's being debated at the moment. Another person who appeared in, since we've mentioned COVID, is Bill Gates. So apparently Bill Gates caught an STD and then was slipping his missus antibiotics, and yet we've got to, accept a jibby jabby from him. None of these people can be trusted. Why were the documents released? Was there massive internal pressure in the American government to release them after they said the files didn't exist?
Look, I mean, I don't know. Some people, conjecture that they were released to put pressure on President Trump to attack Iran because this was all going on this weekend as well. That there was everyone was expecting the USA to make a military strike on Iran. Trump pulled back and he didn't do it. And then some people were suggesting, these were released as a warning to Trump because there was a lot of information about President Trump in those files. Whether that's incriminating or not, I don't know, but they were saying this is a warning. Do what we want. Do what Israel or Netanyahu wants, or we're going to release some more things. But I don't know. I mean, I can't second guess it. But to be honest with you, I'm glad that they are, because everything that's being done in secret with these disgusting psychopathic pedophiles needs to come out to the open. So I'm glad that some of it's come out into the open so everyone can see what we're dealing with here. And, this goes right up to the royal family with Prince Andrew as well, or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's now known.
What surname that is.
Indeed. So, and I think there's a lot more that's going to come out. The interesting thing as well is you had people for Trump is bizarre, because before the election it was like, the Epstein files, we're going to release them, everyone's going to know. And then when he got into power, he suddenly said, no, there's nothing there, stop talking about it, it's fake news. He got very, very angry about anyone that would even mention them. And now they've been released, and now he's saying, this is bad for the Democrats. So he's not making any coherent sense at all about these Epstein files. So I don't know, if anything will come out about him or not. I don't know, but I am glad that we have got some real substance now, which is what people were expecting. That this shows some of the people that we always knew were psychopaths and utterly wicked and now shown to be so. We need the full disclosure now, but I think there's still a lot more to come, to be honest, and we need that to happen too.
And we need this information to actually filter down to the general public, because I'm always concerned with like platforms like X or Facebook. They're very sort of tight-knit bubbles, and the information rarely sort of escapes out of those silos and into other domains where an average person can see what's going on. And as for Trump, it's probably the $250 million that he got from the Adelsons that changed his opinion when he got into power. And that name is associated with, obviously, with Israel and the Mossad. You mentioned Iran. That is the rumor that's going around, that he is being forced to attack Iran by Mossad and the intelligence agencies, the cabal, saying, if you don't hit Iran, we're going to release more damaging information that contains a lot of stuff about you. There's a massive buildup of American military and Navy power in the Arabian Sea and the Gulf of Oman. Do you think war is coming?
No, I don't. It's not necessary. It's not necessarily. It's not inevitable. And I think there's two reasons for that. I mean, the conjecture that, the Mossad is threatening Trump with more disclosure of, damaging documents, it is conjecture. I don't know if that's true or not. It's just a theory. But, you look at the movements of the USS Abraham Lincoln. It moved very close to Iran. And then in the last couple of days, it's moved further away. It's backed off a bit. And I think, other things that people are saying is that Trump wanted to do a small strike on Iran to save face, but in a way where Iran wouldn't strike back. But Iran is not the Iran of the 1980s and 1990s. It is a very seriously strong military power that will obliterate Israel and US air bases in the Middle East and the ships in the flotilla that's centered around the USS Abraham Lincoln. So there will be absolute devastation on a lot of the American military forces in the Middle East if they strike Iran. And I think that he's probably realized, well, actually, we can't strike Iran again and just like, oh, well, there's going to be a little war and then, it'll end after 12 days like it did before. Iran doesn't trust the USA because the USA simply can't be trusted in terms of negotiating with these people. They've shown bad faith to Russia and to Iran many, many times. So they don't trust them anymore. And also added to that, you've now got the Chinese Navy has turned up and they're doing military exercises with the Iranian Navy. So I think that's given Trump and the American military a lot of pause to think, okay, well, they're not just dealing with Iran now. There's China involved too. They don't want to go to war with Iran and China, which will be the case if they do. So I think I'm very glad. I have been praying about this situation. I'm very glad that they seem to have backed off, at least temporarily. We didn't have a war at the weekend. It hasn't started already. And I hope that people will just de-escalate and not start anything.
I mean, I think if it does kick off in the Middle East, with a direct attack on Iran, everybody's going to get sucked in. It'll be different to what we see between Russia and Ukraine. But my other concern is, we mentioned how there was, there's this economic crisis that's being papered over and has been for the last 5 or 6 years. America, in particular, is the one that's covering up its financial issues, with massive amounts of debt. It's $1 trillion extra debt every few months. America, when it falls economically, all it will have left is this huge doomsday weapon that's its entire military, and that they may fall back and use it. Do you think that that's a distinct possibility?
Well, that's why
they'll wipe the playing board, so to speak, and just go to war, similar to what happened with COVID.
Yeah, exactly. We know there's a financial crisis coming. There's lights flashing all over the place in the global financial system, whether it's the silver market, which is like way oversold, and there's the seven big tech stocks, which are basically just selling the same rubbish to each other. It's not actually real.
Yeah,
They're not
yeah.
making any actual real profit with any real money. The massive government debt you've got in the USA and also the EU and the UK, and many other things, and they will cover this up with a war or a pandemic or something else or a terrorist attack. That's what they will try and do, as they've done many times in the past. But I think by us looking at this and calling it out makes it less likely, because the more people who realize that all that's happening, all this build up to war is, well, a lot of it is to cover up this imminent financial crisis we've got, and so that nobody sees that what's happening is all the bankers' fault. The greedy bankers in the Federal Reserve and the hedge funds in BlackRock and so on, and so we blame something else for what happens when it happens, rather than seeing who really is the people that have been at fault. And more people are noticing this now, and the more people that notice, the better.
Maybe that's why the Epstein files have been released. It's actually to prevent war, because people are going, oh, who are our enemy? Oh, Mossad, the intelligence agencies, or these particular countries, or this particular group of people. And like you said, as people become more aware of it, it's more difficult for them to take action. You are leader of the Heritage Party. This country is in absolute political turmoil. It's hard for me to believe that Keir Starmer's government is worse than the previous Conservative government after what they did during COVID. What is your take on the state of of British politics, and a competitor of yours, the Reform Party? Who, by the way, there's a picture out of Nigel Farage with Epstein that's come out this morning. So it's everybody. Yeah,
I saw that. I didn't know. I didn't repost it because I thought, is this real? Is this AI? Because you never know these days. But people are saying it's real, so I'm going to look into that more. But yeah, there's two things there. I mean, obviously, what I have used to call the Uniparty, the fake Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, they're all the same. They all support mass immigration. They all support this net zero insanity. They're all grossly financially irresponsible. They're all woke as hell to one extent or another. And so, it's no surprise that Labour are worse than the Tories, but the Tories were absolutely awful. They were as bad as Labour in the last 5 years in the COVID era, and obviously with the mass immigration. So there's really no difference. The only difference between the two is in terms of tone, because Boris Johnson always presented himself as though I'm this nice, affable person with floppy hair and everyone likes him. It's unbelievable that there's a lot of people who still think that Boris Johnson was wonderful. I don't know why, but he was dreadful. And then Keir Starmer is obviously this dour, robotic, very unlikable person. Yep. But they're doing exactly the same thing, in terms of managed decline, or I would say managed demolition now, really. And then you've asked about reform as well. Well, I think everyone can now see reform are no different to the Uniparty. They brought in Nadeem Zahawi, who was, the vaccine minister who wanted to get 50 million plus people injected with this poison. And he's now come over to reform. And they brought in Robert Jenrick, who was in charge of migrant hotels as the immigration minister. They were at his peak when he was there in the fake Conservatives. And now he's pretending, I'm against immigration. But he was the one who did so much to increase it. So you've got all these dreadful fake Conservatives who've moved over to reform. It's clearly now no different to the Uniparty. It is part of the Uniparty, and I'm now treating it as such. Yep. So I consider reform now the same as the Tories and Labour. They're no different. And so I'm really glad I started the Heritage Party when I did in 2020 during the first lockdown, and then we launched in September 2020. Now we've been going between 5 and 6 years. This is going to be our sixth set of elections this year, and a lot of people really like what we stand for. So as we go on, more people hear about us, more people read our manifesto, and I think is there just basic common sense policies based on positive principles, which the country needs, which everyone agreed with 30 or 40 years ago. You know, I get called all kinds of things. You know, I regularly get called a conspiracy theorist or far right or homophobic or Islamophobic or anti-Semitic. It's just nonsense. You know, it's just like, this is just common sense. You know, we want national sovereignty, free speech, financial responsibility. I mean, how on earth is that far right? It's ridiculous. So, so yeah. So I see the five parties that get puffed and promoted all as being just disastrous. And in fact, I think reform is the most dangerous because a lot of people support them for the very best of reasons, from the very best of intentions, because they actually think that they're different. But they're not. They haven't seen it yet. They can see Tories are dreadful. Yeah, Labour's dreadful. And then the next is, oh, we're going to vote for reform. They're going to save the country. When actually, you know, they're as dodgy as hell. You know, their biggest donor is Christopher Harborne, who's also got a Thai name as well. He lives in Thailand, I think. And he's CEO of Kinetic, which is, you know, a defense contractor that, you know, manufactures drones and sells them to Israel. So, you know, if he's their biggest donor, who is reform going to serve if they get into government? You got to ask yourself that question.
I think a lot of the revenue streams or finance that's going into reform come from dubious sources, and actually you might even be able to tie it back somewhere in those 3 million documents that have just been released. I think reform after Zahawi, that just makes them completely unsupportable, particularly prior to the July the 24 election. They promised an investigation into the vaccines, never to be heard again. And in fact, their only policy that they're really standing on, the only thing you really see them talking about is immigration, on nothing else, on how they're going to support the British economy, what they're going to be doing about, I don't know, abortions or any of these other major issues that the country faces. They don't talk about and haven't got anything substantive to say about it. The Heritage Party, how many candidates do you believe that you'll be able to stand in the local elections?
Yeah, well, the local elections coming up this year in England, you know, there's a huge number. I think there's 4,500. Look, we'll stand as many as we can. I don't have a final number yet, but what's really exciting actually is Wales, because in Wales and also Scotland, you've got the regional elections, you've got the Welsh Senedd elections, you've got the Scottish Parliament elections. So I'm aiming to have a full slate of candidates in Wales this year, which will be wonderful for us because it'll be the first time we'll have a full slate, a candidate in every constituency in an area. So there's 16 constituencies for the Senedd, each with 6 Senedd members of the Senedd in them, 6 seats in each constituency. So we're going to stand at least one in every seat. So we're on course to do that. We're raising money at the moment for that. So that's where our big focus is going to be this year. And of course, you know, there will be a lot of attention on the Welsh Senedd, Scottish Parliament elections, you know, as well as the English Council elections this year. So very exciting, you know, for us. I'm actually meeting my Wales candidates tonight. So that's great. You know, our first general election was 2024. We had 41 candidates, which I thought was fantastic for our first election, because it's not easy. You need a lot of money to stand in an election. So we do what we can. You need a lot of people as well. So we do what we can. And we got fantastic people. But there's always room for more. As long as you're socially conservative, you're financially responsible, you see through this net zero nonsense, and you're anti-war, you're welcome in the Heritage Party.
You'll probably get my vote if there's a candidate standing. I've got to say that because I'm recording the podcast with you.
Yeah.
I've actually been thinking about this prior to you coming on. In the last election, I was going to go no vote. I don't want to take part in the system. And I ended up going for reform because I didn't want Starmer to get in. And that's the risk, isn't it? People just go for the best of all the worst options. And, I think... if people voted with their conscience, David, the English Heritage Party would probably do much, much better. Have you got a final message, like something that we can clip to stick out on why people should vote for you and not for these mainstream parties, which include Reform, who are getting all the coverage on TV?
Yeah, so I mean, the Heritage Party is set up 5 years ago. We have positive principles which will restore our nation. And all the other parties that I can see don't want to do anything apart from demolish our nation, whether it's the Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, Green Party. They all support mass immigration. They all support net zero, and Reform as well are part of the Uniparty. And people need to realise that they don't have any principles. They blow with the wind. And they'll say one thing today and another thing the next day. Whereas with the Heritage Party, we've got clear principles that will restore our nation. We want free speech and liberty, national sovereignty, equality before the law, no more of this two-tier policing, self-sufficiency in energy, no more of this net zero nonsense, transport to work to get you from A to B, none of this low traffic neighborhood stuff, and freedom, of course, none of this digital ID stuff, none of this central bank digital currency. We don't want any of that. We want to keep cash. And we're uniquely, we have a section in our manifesto which is a culture of life. So we'll be against anything that kills people, whether it's experimental injections, gender mutilation, euthanasia, abortion. All of those things are bad for the country, and all the other parties you've got seem to want to do everything possible to kill people as well as send them to war, but we wouldn't do that. So so have a look at our manifesto. It's on our website, heritageparty.org. We always need more members, more candidates. So if you're interested in standing as a candidate and actually taking the step to stand so people can vote for you, it's a service to your neighbors. It's a service to your people in your neighborhood to stand. So they've got a choice to vote for someone who's good and not someone who doesn't care about them. So there you go.
Great. I'll get that clipped. We'll get that out there. And David, you've won my vote for the local elections if there's a candidate standing. I know how difficult it is as an independent candidate to try and stand in local elections. You've got almost no chance. I only ever got 5% of the vote. So I'm hoping that because you've got a rosette, that actually improves your chances. Go and contact David if you want to be a councillor candidate, or even in the next general election, whether that is, hopefully you'll be able to stand a bigger field and you would have greater recognition from the public. David, it's been fantastic to talk to you again. You have got my vote. I meant that.
Thank you.
And I will be supporting the English Heritage Party online going forward. I believe that you are probably the only genuine leader of a party out there at the moment. And you're a conspiracy theorist, which means you're probably right about many, many things. David, thank you very much. And
thanks, Darren.
And anyone who is listening, remember, in these elections, you should be voting with your conscience. If you're all in on Reform, I think you need to have a look at some of their recent defections, where their money is coming on, and go and check out that picture of Farage with Epstein. Okay? But whatever you do, please tune in, because we've got some great guests coming up in the very near future, and make sure you stay awake.